originally Bloodguard started out as Gargoyle. So it's Gargoyle, Bloodguard, Elf Lord, and Dragon King. That was the series. These things always happen to me. I always like start writing just as whatever the genre I'm going in is going down. Well, at the time, romantasy didn't exist. So Gargoyle, the first book, and my agent's like, well, write the first 50 pages for each. And I did it for Gargoyle and I did it for Bloodguard. And Gargoyle immediately went to acquisitions. And I was so excited. And it was rejected because he was a gargoyle. It was considered interspecies relations. And they didn't know whether to market in fantasy or romance. So they passed. They didn't have it was exactly what romantasy what is back then, but they said, well, we don't know where to put it. There's romance over here and fantasy, they don't go together. We can't market it. And as we know, a lot of it, if it's not something they can sell, a house is going to pass on it. It doesn't matter how many books you publish or where you were published. So I kind of just put that on the back burner. And then 2 years has it been? Probably. One July, my Nicole called me and she said, "Send me Bloodguard." What? Send me Bloodguard. Just send it to me right now. Well, let me find it because at this point it had been put away. And I just skimmed through it and I sent it to her. And the next day, Entangled offered me a 3-book deal because even though it wasn't right then, it is now. And I just think sometimes it's okay to hear a no because you could hear a yes 12 years later. I always knew Leith from the start. Leith is they cut this reference out because they said it was too modern. But according to his love interest, Maeve, Leith has resting murderer face. Like he's just angry. Like he's like Celia, if you don't want to get too close. So there's this tournament, and part of it is taken from the Gladiators movies perspective. I envision everything at the Coliseum. So what started off as a game like 100 years ago in the Kingdom of Arrow, there was this tournament to decide who would be the best fighter in all the land. They get money, they're given the opportunity to be the general of the army because they are the best, most strategic, most intelligent, most strongest fighter. So it was considered an honor. But it started as the years passed, it started getting harder. And they had the first 2 Bloodguards die. And that was never supposed to happen, but it had started to get so strong. But the one of the elf lords really recognized this as we have an opportunity here. Because as much as people were like, oh my God, the bloodthirsty crowd loved it. They showed up, they loved the fight and they're like, oh my gosh, it said this is horrible. But then it's like that when you watch MMA and you're seeing like blood, and it's just like, you're like, oh my God, this part, you're not thinking this poor guy. You're thinking that was a really good punch. That was a really good kick to the head. And when you think about an era that's more like, fantasy, they're not going to have TV. This is their entertainment, just like the Gladiator arena was originally made. So as soon as, so they got more dangerous, but they were still, it's still voluntary. But then what has started happening was most of our Earth is falling apart. There's like climate issues, the deserts are super dry now, no rain ever comes, the mountains never lose their ice or snow. So there's different things going on. So when you're a migrant farm worker, you don't want to be in the hot sun all day picking berries. you do it because you have to, because that's your, that whether it's something that you choose to do, and like with the eventual of doing something else or doing it for the rest of your life, it's a hard job. They do it because they have to, because they want to make a better life for their kids. They want to be able to feed their families. That's where Leith comes in. He was one of those workers, and he's like, there has to be something better. His sisters are working the fields, his mother's working the fields. He's like, they need better. So he volunteers to become a blood guard, like in the gladiator arena. But at first, they know it's a big deal. You get food, you get, uniforms, you get, housing, and it's incredible. But a month after Leith gets there, there's this an attempt to kill the queen, and she's left in a coma. From there, like, they start getting less. Like, now they're in barracks, now they're barely getting fed, because now it's getting bloodthirsty, and now it's to the death. And it wasn't originally like that. It just has come from one thing and has become a totally different thing. So it's but in this whole time, he's like, I have to do this for my family. Leith didn't come in here thinking, okay, let me go kill people. He came in as to fight. And now he doesn't have a choice. It's either him or his opponent, and he has to help his family. Now with Maeve, Maeve was a princess. My challenging part with Maeve is, okay, she's a princess, she's a healer, she's, she's kind, she, volunteers to help the poor, she is wealthy. That's kind of a hard person to relate to. That's kind of a hard person, maybe even to like. Nobody wants a perfect person. You can't relate to that. So I gave her a lot of problems, and I gave her a very strong mission. She has to get on the throne. Her grandmother was the one that was in a coma and who had died. The way I set up the world is the regent, who was the former general Vitor, is the current regent. So in order for a princess to take the throne, a few things have to happen. Otherwise, I'd be like, why don't you just kill Maeve? You have to be a minimum of 21, I think I put, or 22. Minimum, it's a minimum age. You have to be of royal blood. And you have to, because it's such an important job, you have to have a spouse. But that spouse has to be a royal as well, or have a royal title. Bloodguard is a royal title. So Maeve has got to get on the throne. And everybody's like, well, why don't they just kill her and take the throne? Because even though there's other royals, the way it works is, if you're not a direct descendant, say Maeve were to die, that all that gets split among the 6 different houses. So she has a real fight in more ways than one to get that throne. There's this great quote, and I'm not saying it just because I wrote it, but there's this great quote where Leith says, it's just my luck that the person who's offering me her help is not already sitting on the throne. I get the one who's trying to claw her way there. He's like, that figures. But it's how they end up helping each other out, because both need Leith to be Bloodguard.